Hello, welcome. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. My name's Richard McKeon. I'll be your host. I'm joined by my colleague Gareth Bell. Hello, Gareth.
Hi, Richard. How you doing? We're the black and white tonight, the dark side and the light side. Gonna get it on tonight.
We were meant to be in bright yellow this evening, Gareth. I think both of us managed to get it wrong. Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining us anyway, no matter what wardrobe we have. We'll be drinking 5 whiskies this evening, tasting and discussing them. We've got 4 core range whiskies from Mackmyra and our brand new seasonal release. We've got Connor behind the scenes pulling the strings. He's got some photos and some videos ready for us. And Camille, you might have seen his name pop up on the screen there, helping us out in the comments. As we go, if anyone would like to comment, any thoughts you have on the drams, any questions, please do. We'd like this to be as interactive as possible for everyone. And I think it'll make it a fun evening together, hopefully. And begin thinking, please, about what your favourites are as we go through, because we've got a really great offer to talk about at the end of the show. So stick around and we'll let you know. But I think, Gareth, I'll pass over to you to let everybody know about what new updates you might have, what's been happening with Mackmyra recently.
Yeah, sorry, just take a moment of your time before we get into the drinking and everything, just a bit of the latest kind of news we've been doing. Quite recently, we've launched our UK cask program, which is really exciting. The 30-litre casks is the original cask size and the DNA of a lot of the whiskey that Mackmyra put out. These small casks give a great kind of almost acceleration to the process of the whiskey maturing, and so you don't need to keep them as long. You can have casks which are laid down brand new, already matured casks. So these are being made available, and right now we've got an offer to go with those, a cask offer where you get a free trip to the distillery, a hard hat visit for a couple of days, and you get 15% off for 5 years and some great value stuff. So if you're interested in casks, we can talk about that. It's all on the web shop as well. What are the news? What else has been happening? Recently we've relaunched some old bottles that we've pulled out from our archives. They're called Prelidium, which was our first release many years ago. Now we've got 6 versions of this. So over the next 6 weeks, each week we're going to be releasing one version. So Prelidium 1 is just gone out last week, I believe. And there are so few of these. These really are collector's corner. If you can get your hands on some of these, this is the original stuff that was put out many years ago when the distillery started. So this is rare stuff and a piece of history. So if you like that kind of thing, it started this week, and the next few 5 weeks we'll be putting the rest of them out. And finally, I hope you might know, if you've been looking at social media, but if you haven't, we've released our new seasonal, which is great news. And the seasonal is Jaktlycka. It's this beautiful thing. Oh, there it is on the screen. Look at that. So we're going to talk a lot about that tonight as well, and we're going to taste it with you. So I hope, welcome to the Mackmyra family. We're all about having a bit of fun and a bit of a laugh and enjoying what we do. And hopefully you're going to enjoy the whiskies with us tonight.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks very much for that. The collector's corner is actually really interesting. Those Preludiums, there's only like between, I think, 1 and 5 of certain bottles of that. So yeah, exactly. That really is like proper collectible stuff. I think that word gets used quite often, but this really is that case. So Gareth, we're going to do something a little bit different, the order a little bit different to how we do, because you and I were discussing things before about tastings taking sometimes too long, and we can be guilty of it. Before getting into the drams, so too much preamble. So what we thought we would do, everyone's got their tasting pack at home. If you don't, hopefully you can for the next one, or you've got a bottle of Mac at home or Mackmyra. So that would be the pack you've got. Instead of going for the Mac first, we're going to go for the Brooks whiskey first, the second from left in your pack. The reason being is this is our first core release. It was Brooks Distillery, is the first ever distillery that we moved into. So we could all pour a glass of that together. That means that Gareth can take it away and talk a bit about the history as well as the whiskey, and then we'll move on to Mac, which is made at our new distillery. So, Gareth, that's probably enough preamble. I think we've done that very well, if you ask me. Very quick.
Yeah, the guys want a drink, I guess.
If you haven't got a drink in your glass, I'd advise to do so now. And
I'm already poured out and ready to go. So as Richard said, slightly different view. We're going to go for the Brooks whiskey, or some people call it a breakfast whiskey. So this is the part of our core range, as Richard mentioned. one of the unusual things about most of the bottles that we do is they have 8 little dimples around the bottom of here, and this represents the 8 founders. Now it's 1999, not so long ago, 21 years ago, since Mackmyra was founded by a bunch of guys who went on skiing holidays and said, why haven't we got a distillery in Sweden? So the story went from there, and these guys did a lot of research. They visited places, and Scotland, and a lot of the distilleries learned how to do things, set up a little miniature still, 100-litre still, of which only around 30 litres was usable for the foreshots and the feints afterwards. The middle cut, that 30 litres. And that's why they originally developed a 30-litre barrel, which became part of their DNA, as we talked about. So it's quite interesting that kept. And that distillery, Brooks was at Mackmyra, was set up and lasted quite a while until we built a big brand new distillery. But more of that later. Let's talk more about the Brooks whiskey. We will get to drink it very soon. I won't talk forever on it, but what I do like to talk about is this bottle, because this bottle is like a potted history of Mackmyra. It's got pretty much everything on there. It's got the recipes, the wood, the Swedish wood that we use. It gives a really kind of like nice spicy element to it. So this is it's not too strong a whiskey. This is 41.4%. So it's around about where we'd imagine it to be, but it's come to known as like the characteristic of Mackmyra, and it's kind of like sitting there as a sort of benchmark, if you like, and it's lasted the journey. It's still here, like I think so, like 15 years later. So it's doing really well from that. The Brooks whiskey is Brooks. It's like an industrial metal, sort of an everyday kind of drinking whiskey sort of thing. It's something that you could have from dusk till dawn or dawn till dusk, whichever is your whiskey drinking preference. So guys, be interactive with us. Tell us your thoughts, comments, any questions. You know, we're here to help you tonight if you've got anything that you need to understand, but we will talk you through and not try to bore you too much with all the detailed information, but we will try to get this lovely stuff into your mouths and see what you think. So nosing, Richard, what are you getting? The classic Mackmyra nose.
See, yeah, this for me, I always associate this with like the DNA of Mackmyra, because it's got our new make is, you know, fruity and spicy. There are other elements to it and other complexities you can have, but I always think fruity, spicy, and this has got that to it.
Yeah, I kind of like the kind of like licoricey tones that you get on the top of this one. It's kind of like on top of the sweet pear, just that kind of licorice edge to it as well. Really a lot in there, a lot of flavour going on, just in the nose in itself, you know. So brilliant. And the color, you know, nice. I mean, this stuff in here is it's sort of six years old, the recipe which goes in there, and it's got quite a mix of stuff. I mean, I didn't go into detail about all the different kind of barrels that go into here. It's got some sherry barrels in there. It's got 200-litre new make bourbon, remake bourbon. There's a lot that's gone into this recipe, and it's a well-guarded secret, all the kind of like, you know, the components that are in there, you know. So it's a recipe that our chief nose officer, Angela Dorizio, she puts these recipes together and has them under lock and key, I believe, and so that's what goes into it. But a very varied recipe. So let's see what it tastes like.
Skull.
Skull, indeed.
I'm sorry if I disappeared there, Gareth.
Did you? I didn't really notice. I saw you waving a little bit. I thought, like, I don't know if you noticed, but there's a tiny little fruit fly that's going around in front of my face at the moment. And any minute now, I'm going to go like this to try and catch it. So watch out, because the bottles could fly.
Don't let it get in your whiskey and ruin it. Yeah.
This whiskey always amazes me when I drink it, because it just has so much going for it. It's a nice, fresh, fruity feel. It comes in, gives you a nice little hit of spice, and a long, slow finish afterwards, where the fruits and the Mackmyra DNA, the pear, essentially really sort of starts to come through, and it kind of likes a little kind of burnt toffee kind of flavor at the end, you know, like a brittle toffee I get on the end of it. Just a superb whiskey. And it's not about the alcohol level I get on this one. It's more about the actual flavors and mix with alcohol. And I think that's why it's quite a lower alcohol than quite a lot of the other stuff that we do. I wouldn't call it entry level. It's the way into our whiskies at the ABV level. But of course, you know, as everyone says, you drink the whiskey the way you like it. And I know, Richard, you're a great exponent for people, you know, making and mixing the whiskies the way that they like to drink them.
Yeah, well, I think the right way. Oh, hello. Am I here? Yeah. Sorry, I've had problems today. I thought I'd managed to get rid of the gremlins, but yeah, I believe the right way to drink whiskey is however somebody wants to. I tend to drink my whiskey neat and then add water to taste. And I'm not scared to mix it in cocktails or anything, but that's only because now we've had Camille, our colleague, who has given us an education in how good they can be when you use good spirits into a cocktail. So if someone wanted to buy a whiskey and fill it, you know, a glass full of Coke, it's not something I would do, but I would encourage that person to do whatever they wanted. That's yes, my philosophy.
Exactly. We've got a couple of latecomers coming in. So just to recap, guys, we're going to go through 5 of our whiskies tonight, 4 core range and one new seasonal range. And we're at the start, which is Brooks Whisky. So this is where we are, Mackmyra Brooks Whisky. So if you want to fill your glasses with that, with your samples, please do catch up with us. You might have to swig it down a little bit. Unfortunately, I seem to put a rather large measure in my glass, Richard, which is very unfortunate. And I've only got one glass to go with tonight, so that's my excuse. But I could drink this all day. It's a delicious whiskey. It's not something, there's nothing offensive about it. It's just beautifully well crafted, and that recipe that Angela's been using for years holds up so well. It is really repeatable, and that fruit flavor, and a little bit of banana. Yeah, I get what Camille's saying on the banana comes through on the nose.
Banana for me.
Just a little bit of banana, that comes off it. It's got that gooey, sweet texture that comes off the end.
Foam bananas, like the penny sweet banana. That's what I often find with it, and I say often, like always, really.
Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful. And you know, this is a sub £50 whiskey. It's in the £40. This is kind of like accessible, really accessible. We at Mackmyra, we don't premiumize our whiskies to the hundreds and thousands of pounds. Even for our top of the range stuff, you know, it's around about £100 is the maximum you'll pay for our real rare ones, which are the moments. Apart from the collectible Prelidiums, which are years and years old, and they've got pretty decent pricing on those, let me tell you. But they are collector's items. But in general, our range is known to be accessible. You know, we're not trying to price people out of the market, but we're putting a good product in at a good price. And you've got a range of products that we do, and we have 3 different ranges. We have the core range, which we're doing tonight. We've got one seasonal from our seasonal range that kind of sits in the middle, the kind of 50 to 70 mark. We have a few special collaborations that are around about the same, and then right at the top of the tree we have things called moments, and they are specially selected casks and collaborations with celebrities and other things like this, where just a few casks are put together, very limited numbers, and they come in at the top of the range. We haven't got one of them tonight, but they're well worth looking out for. If you look behind me, there's a whole row of them above the Swedish flag. There they all are. So that's a great start. I'm going to have to shut up, and I do tend to talk a lot. I'd rather drink a bit more and let Richard talk a bit.
There we go. I was happy listening to you for a bit, Gareth. You were doing all the heavy lifting for me there. I could just sit here and enjoy a drink. Let's say hello to a few people that I've spotted watching. So hello to Ray from the Berkshire Whisky Club. Hello to Callum and Kate. I've spotted them in there. And then Anthony as well. I've seen a comment making, he said he's made some awesome cocktails at Mackmyra. And so, yeah, thank you all for joining us. Yeah, Brooks Sour Jam. Brooks Jam Sour. Camille is our star behind the bar. We refer to him as our ambassador colleague. Ambassador cocktail extraordinaire, yeah.
You can tell I'm a pretty old guy, and I'm a kind of like dyed-in-the-wool, cast strength Isla kind of guy. And I've really had my eyes opened over the last sort of year or so, working with people like Camille, who's got great knowledge about combining flavors. And once I started tasting cocktails with good ingredients in them, it's really changed my outlook on drinking per se. So it's opened my eyes. So albeit to it. And let me remind you, go on.
Oh, so only what you were saying then. I think we might have said this on a tasting before, but someone just said to me, if you went and spoke to a chef and said, does it matter what ingredients you use when you're making something? If you use good ingredients, are you going to get a better result? Yeah. That's just the way of thinking about it with cocktails. You shouldn't just use necessarily whatever cheap stuff you've got on the shelf just to sort of mix it in and get rid of the flavor. If you want a cocktail to taste brilliant, then do it. But this is, for me, I'd put it in a cocktail, but I'd sip this neat all day long. And in fact, I do. I wouldn't want to say how many bottles of this I've been through since joining now, but this is something I enjoy to drink. You can any time of day within reason, and if you've got cause for celebration, of course. But Gareth, you did mention that we refer to it as a breakfast whiskey, and it is very much so. You're off to a big day. You've got a reason to pour a glass.
It's a great start to the day. And let me just tease you a little bit more. We've got such a great deal for you, because you're the new crowd that are watching us tonight. Hopefully, a lot of people that haven't been with us. And welcome to the family, as it were. We've got a nice deal for you guys. So check around at the end and watch out what we're going to do for you at the end. But so that's Brooks Whisky. I think it's a great start. You can never have a better start than that kind of thing. Really gets the palate going, excites the taste buds, really sits with you and says, this is an interesting whiskey. It's a whiskey that's got a lot of history around it, a lot of passion that went into making it, and it stood the test of time, and it carries on. So we're willing to make this our benchmark, to take us forward into the future. And what we did, because we became popular. Who would have thought it, with all this wonderful whiskey we're drinking? And the guys decided to scale up. So what did they build, Richard? What did they do?
Well, that's not a bad segue onto the Mac. Hopefully we've given everyone enough time, perhaps, to enjoy their Brooks Whisky. I think I'm going to have to get myself a second glass, because
Richard is officially a lightweight, by the way, guys. Officially a lightweight.
Well, I
don't mean that at all.
I want to savour it. I don't want to just knock it back. So that's probably a good moment to get onto the Mac. What Gareth was saying, so Brooks Distillery, where Brooks Whisky is took its name from, was our first ever commercial distillery that we moved into after having this is the back end of it, and the water source that we've got for the older distillery, and that's it from above. I think a brilliant shot, that. Enjoy the Swedish flag in there as well, so it is where it is. But in 2011, we finished construction and you called it an enormous refurbishment, if you will, of this disused power plant, a big 35-meter tall power plant that we've now turned into a gravity distillery. That's it from the front. If you hold that picture for a moment, please, Connor, you can see the big glass frontage there. That goes up to about floors 4 or 5. You can see sort of just behind it, up to the right, you can see that the building actually carries on higher up. To the front of it, you can see through into the fermentation tanks. That's a great shot. And then the stills below. So how this works, the top floor is where the viewing gallery and bar is, because if you're going to have something like that at a distillery, you want to have that up on the top. So you can see in this picture here, we've got the sky bar. Then each of the floors going down from there, utilizing gravity with each step of the process, so we're not using power to pump things from one room to another. Gravity takes it down. So the top part of the process, you've got that green bit on the left. I don't know what to call it in that picture, but that's a grain silo where the grain is pushed slowly up to the top floor, at which point it comes out. Top floor is like rinsing and washing of the barley, sieving. Then it goes down into grinding, so you're making your grist and this sort of stuff. One below that, you've got your mashing, so you're basically making your is it the wort at that point, the wort, and then on its way down into the fermentation tanks, and you can see those just above the copper pot stills there, of which we've got I think it's 12 8,000 litre stainless steel tanks there, and then it goes down from the fermentation tanks. Gravity takes that down into the stills, where we distill our what is basically beer into whiskey. 2 stills there. The wash stills 10,000 litres, spirit stills 8,000 litres. And something that I actually only learned about within the last few weeks properly was the way that we heat the stills, which is actually, I think, fascinating as it is unique. We don't use steam, we don't use direct fire, we use a pressurized water system. And when you pressurize water, you're able to heat it to above 100 degrees Celsius without it evaporating, without becoming steam. So we pressurize this water and it heats up. We use it at 108 degrees Celsius. And underneath the stills, we've got a constant stream of liquid being drawn out from the still, passing through this heat exchange underneath and then back up into the still. So it's heated and sort of outside the still and then comes back into it. But where it goes through that system, it's exposed to these pipes that have this pressurized water going through it, which then heats it. But that means that we're able to, the cut on the environmental impact, on the energy that we use is enormous. All the water we use for heating is part of a contained system. We're getting geeky now, but I think it's brilliant. And anyone watching that knows about whiskey has never seen it before. Great idea. Let's get this in the glass. You should have said that to start. But yeah,
here's a hint, Richard.
I've got too impassioned about it because it's so new to me. This particular part, I'm just excited to share and tell people.
You're just a geek at heart, Richard. I know you are.
I can't help it. But let's have it in the glass anyway, and then we'll see. But so what
is this? What's this, Richard? What's this all about?
So
it says Mac on the bottle.
The reason we're talking about this distillery with Mac now is this is the first whiskey that we produced when we moved into this distillery. This is the only whiskey we have that's been 100% produced at the Gravity Distillery. It's made of it's a cask recipe, is new oak. And I think now there's some bourbon oak in there as well, because this used to be 3 years old when we released it. And every time we've released a new batch, it's become older and older. So I think we're about 7 or 8 years old now with the whiskies that we've got in the bottles that we've got at home. So it would have been a few years ago, it would have been 3 years old. And now it's 7 or 8. But what you should have from it, if everyone's got their nose already going, because of the influence of virgin American oak, which is what they use to make bourbon, and the use of ex-bourbon casks, you should get quite a big hit of things like vanilla and caramels and sort of sweetness like that. Pears as well, yeah, but baked pear, I think, with it.
Mm. The other thing was that this was a slight direction away, because this was originally requested by the Swedish alcohol sort of government called Systembolaget, and so they wanted their own particular design of bottle, so it doesn't have the dimples, it doesn't have a box to it, and it was kind of like to sit on a back bar. You can see it from a long way away. It says Mac, and it's kind of got the speed bar bottle sort of thing. So a slightly different design than what most of the bottles are, and we've retained that design for that. So very popular in Sweden. But of course, it's a great entry level whiskey. Not entry in terms of it's our lowest price whiskey. I think it's like in the £30 or something like that.
Entry level into our range, I would say.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Entry level.
There's nothing low class about this. It's a really great. The flavors that come out of this, just the nose on it is superb. It's pears all the way for me. What do other people get? Tell us your thoughts on this one, because I think people have got very noses, but people to pull out different nuances from this. Some people talk about pears, some have apples that go in it. Green apples is the main sort of tasting note for it. What do you smell in it? Let us know what your thoughts are on this.
I think, have you ever added water to? I've added water to this, Gareth, when I've experimented with it. You know, in our earlier days, because if anyone that's not watching didn't know, Gareth and I started together not long before lockdown. At which point, I also formed them in lots of different ways. I tend to now just drink this one neat at 40%. It's the right sort of level for me. But
I've never added water to this, Richard. Does it change it substantially?
I'm not. Do you know what? I think I'm going to do it now. I will say, just a bit sort of tongue in cheek, that. Although you should add water to it if you want to. Technically, if you do, it's no longer 40% because you've changed it, and anything below 40% isn't whiskey. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. I might actually add a drop of water now to sit, because you've said what other notes do you get, and people get different things. I always have the same stuff because I drink it the same way.
Pear drops in the oak.
Yeah.
Good call by Kate. There, she's picked out the pear drops in there. I kind of get really good pear flavor on that cake. So and it's funny how some people agree on things and other people get flavors and taste that. Where the hell did that come from? I can't find it in there. But we're all individual. We're all different with one of these, aren't we?
If they find it, it's the right answer. There's something satisfying about being on a tasting and somebody says, "What do you get?" and you name a few notes and they go, "Yeah, that's on the box," or "That's what I get." And there is something satisfying about that. But at the same time, if you say something and no one else has found it, it doesn't mean it's not in there. If you found it, then it exists in there. Because if you're thinking about this note or this flavor, then you're right, because it's also subjective. Yeah.
Let's taste it.
To the palate.
Skål. Skål, everyone. No,
so I have banana on the I've added water to it then, and I was getting bananas on the finish, and I don't think I've ever had them before with this.
Oh, that's interesting. That pulls it out. It's interesting we've done this way around, because this has got it's got less spice to it, less Swedish oak to it. So it's a much more fruitier and a more gentle kind of experience. It's not quite as tarty and spicy as the first one in Brooks whiskey, which does have some of our famous Swedish oak matured whiskey, which that oak really does tell a tale, and we'll come on to that in the next whiskey in a big way. But it really just is about fruit, and that's why I think Camille and others like him have used this as a great base for a cocktail, because the flavors that come out of this whiskey are such great bases to mix with other flavors, compounds, and bring them together in something wonderful. But even by itself, it's just such a wonderful, I mean, 40%, it's not a lot of alcohol in there, so it lets the flavor shine through that distillation process. And as Richard said, this used to be a 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old. Now it's 7, 8-year-old. We're using the same kind of cask profiles and the same distillations that we laid down many years ago. So this is aging with time, and I think it just gets better and better. Richard, this one, I think this retails at something like 35 quid. It's a no-brainer. It's absolutely wonderful.
I think something you said about the fruits and about people being able to use it for different things, should they wish. It's a little ironic in that, so this is a very versatile whiskey, and it was Angela D'Orazio, our chief nose officer, master blender. She's designed this whiskey and its profile to be versatile, something that we could drink at home and you can sip at home and enjoy, or people in bars can use on speed rails and make all sorts of different fancy things with it. But it's ironic that this is so versatile when actually, like the Brooks whiskey, another translation for Brooks is like versatile. It translates into a number of different things in Swedish, a number of different usages. But this is the versatile one. I mean, any whiskey is as versatile as you want to stretch it to be, but this is actually sort of designed to be that way.
Yeah. So as Richard said, the first real release that came off the new distillery, and the barrels which went into that release have sat in room number 7 in the Bodas mine. Now, what's the Bodas mine? Richard, tell them all about the Bodas mine. What's that all about?
The Bodas mine is one of, I mean, I was getting very excited about the heat exchange that we have for heating the stills and how unique it is, but I don't think anybody else in the world ages their whiskey down in a warehouse. This is a video of one of our colleagues, Jonathan, and I think Shane, our manager, when they were over in Sweden last year. This is them driving down into the mine. It's about 35, 40 kilometers or so away from the actual distillery. It's 50 meters below ground. It was a 19th century iron ore mine. And over the years, it's been used for a few different things. When that became sort of obsolete, or I don't know, they'd finished up down there. It's been used for testing mining equipment and for cultivating mushrooms and things like that as well. We moved in there with only a few short years after opening. So in the early 2000s, we started stocking things down here. It is, you think you're going to come down and it's going to be, wooden beams above and that sort of thing, but it's, pretty state-of-the-art stuff. One of the major benefits, or some of the major benefits of being down there, is we keep it out of the Swedish cold. So if you know about whiskey maturation, in the hotter climates, things are going to age faster. In colder climates, they're going to age more slowly. So down here, it keeps it at a much more sort of temperate environment. It's kept between 7 and 9 degrees Celsius, 24/7. And it's kept at a very high humidity of around 98 to 99%. Yep. So we spend probably the majority of energy that we use actually as a distillery is probably pumping water and things out of here from where it collects from all the humidity. But you see all these casks down here, so where just about everything we have, it matures down in the warehouse in all these different compartments and rooms. We have a number of other different warehouses scattered around the country. One's on top of a mountain. There's one on little islands. One of those is dug into this big rock that used to be used for munitions store, over the course of, wars and things in the past. And that's right next to Stockholm itself, the series of islands that are around there. So lots of different warehouses around that we use for the 30-litre cask program. But that Bodas mine, 50-metre underground, I just think it's brilliant. I think it's cool to use, the word. I think it really is.
Yeah, it's something pretty unique and really fortuitous that it came available to Mackmyra at the right time to store it. So they have so much whiskey maturing in lots of different places, but it's a perfect environment to hide from that -35, -40 that really rips through Sweden in the winter months. So yeah, we don't want to do any distillery visits. And in fact, me and Richard, we haven't even been there. We were meant to go in sort of March, April time, and of course it all got cancelled because of what COVID, all that kind of stuff. So but we might get back there one day. You never know. Welcome to a few late joiners who've just come in. Our old friend Schultz. Hi, Schultz. Glad you could join us tonight. A few. Schultz is from that beautiful whiskey company, the Paul John Whiskey Company. They've got some fabulous stuff. I'm Mackmyra tonight, but I'm not afraid to say there are some great whiskies around, and Paul John is definitely one of them as well. So good evening, Schultz. Glad you could join us. So what else we got to say about Mac, Richard? It's just a great whiskey, isn't it? It's easy going, great entry price, fruity, versatile. It has to be on your back bench, doesn't it?
I think so. Yeah, I think this you can do whatever you want with it. You can enjoy it at home, drinking it how you like. You can change it up into other things if you're at home and you fancy a long drink. And in the £30 range, I think it's bang on the money.
Yeah, it's great. And unfortunately, my glass is kind of like finished now. So
I'm nearly there.
Oh, Dave Worthington. Hi, Dave. Glad you could join us as well from the Boutique guys. They do some great stuff as well. So, yeah, welcome, Dave. Thanks for joining us tonight. I always appreciate it. My beard didn't quite get as long as your Dave, but I did cut it a little bit down today. I was looking too much like Cat Weasel, but you were an inspiration for me, Dave, believe me. Okay, that's 2 out of 5, is it? We've got a few more.
That's 2 out of 5. Next one up is the Svensk Ek, which means Swedish oak.
Literally Swedish oak.
From the shelf. I think, Gareth, if you want to take away this one.
Yeah, we'll do. So Sweden didn't really have any oak a few hundred years ago. It wasn't a thing that was grown, and in the sort of 200-300 years ago, there was a sort of lot of fighting going on, and the Swedish king at the time decided, I want to build some warships and I need some oak. So they decided to import lots of oak saplings from France, I think it was, and they planted loads and loads of oak. And they waited, and they waited, and they waited, and they waited. And because of the cold winters and they really icy, these things grew so slowly. And I think eventually it was ready to harvest by about the 1930s. I think
a little later.
Yeah, just about 200 years too late to build any ships to help them out. But it did leave them with a legacy of forest of Swedish oak. And when the guys from Mackmyra, one of the great things that they did, they said, we want to make a product that's indigenous to Sweden. So we want to make whiskey, but we want to use Swedish products. And bless them, that's what they did. They use that barley that grows in the fields. It's got 16 hours of sunshine during the year, and they use the local water, and they decided we're going to use Swedish oak as well. And but coopering never existed in Sweden. They never made barrels for anything. So pretty much these guys had to start from scratch. They had to train a cooper from an old master and start the whole process. Chopping the trees down and starting to make. The staves have to be, the wood itself has to be dried for nearly 2 years to make it compatible to put into the barrels. And then they started to making the barrels with these things. And and what they decided to put a really heavy char inside these Swedish oak barrels, and the result was just astounding. The spiciness that came out of this and the heat that came out of putting this whiskey into these raw Swedish oak barrels was just phenomenal. And they thought, whoa, we're onto something here. And it's so strong that really they had to dial it down. And that's really why when you see a look on the label, you see this figure here, 10%. So just 10% of the mix of the whiskey that's in our Swedish oak release is in fact from 30-litre Swedish oak barrels. It's that potent. You've got to use it with care. It's like a red hot chili, just a little bit on there. So this is it. The nice orange reflects the oak, and you won't be able to see, but what they've got is like on the front here, you can see the rings of the oak on the outside of this. So this is it really reflects the DNA of the culture of Sweden as a Swedish oak and how it came about. It's not too far away. It's about 30-40 miles to the southwest of the distillery, I think, where this from. Comes with a lovely bottle, but now we're dialing the alcohol up a little bit. This is now up to 46.1 for the Swedish oak. So this is where the alcohol and the flavors really start to not compete, but really kind of like gel at that level. So the Mackmyra Svensek, it sits there as a kind of a testament to the longevity of Swedish products. So let's get some of the glass. Let's not mess about and get it in there. Not too big a one this time. I was quite careful on that one. Not too big a drop. What have you got going on the nose, Richard? What's happening?
I've got a bit bigger. So yeah, so the nose for this. Nose and palate, I find, and I always equate this to the Swedish oak being involved, but I find that I can still find apples and pears as you can in the others. But with this, I find that my idea anyway is that the Swedish oak gives those a cooking effect. So I'm not getting fresh apple or fresh pear as I did a moment ago. Now getting sort of like baked apple and caramelized pear. I know that it's got some black pepper on the nose to me. There's like a spice to it, you know.
Definitely black pepper, yeah. And cooked apples and pears, like almost like a pastry sort of note to it, isn't there?
Yeah.
But what I find really incredible about this is the nose really isn't the foreshot of the taste. The actual, I find in most whiskies, you know, you do the nose, you do the taste, and you think, yeah, there's quite a logical flow to this. I always find it a bit of a misnomer with this one because the nose is quite fruity, quite balanced, quite soft. But let's take a taste of it, everybody, and tell me what you think. Come on.
Yes. You are right about. So that I find the nose is not as big and loud as the palate or the finish. So the nose has got a nice sort of perhaps creamy, understated, modest vibe, if you will. Whereas you get it on the palate. I think we've seen Kate mention as well, much more woody, spicy caramel. You know, Kate, fruity as always. That's what you get with this, and that's just from 10% of the liquid going into Swedish oak casks for just 18 months. The rest of it is all ex-bourbon, but just 10% taken out and put in, and this is the effect you get. Gareth mentioned about, you know, the founders set out. They didn't just want to be another Scottish distillery that was in another country, you know, just copying what other people had done. They wanted to do something that was quintessentially Swedish. And one of the ways they saw that they could do that and achieve it was by using Swedish ingredients. So use Swedish peat, barley, water, yeast, everything's in-house, if you will. But this, they wanted to have everything. In an ideal world, everything would have been done with Swedish oak. But they found out pretty quickly through the experiments that it's so powerful that it has to be used in moderation. And as Gareth, actually, that's a good analogy you had there, the chilies in cooking. It's a brilliant ingredient. It just needs to be done and managed in the right way. And that's what they've tried to achieve with it and with this. And if you ask me, they have.
Yeah, it's great. And after 2-3 seconds, you get that pow of the spice coming through. It's not the hottest spice. It's more like it's not a Vindaloo spice. It's more like a Jalfrezi, if you know your curries. It's something that gives you a bit of a bang, but it doesn't leave you flat on the floor. You know, and it's so surprising, you know, that the oak should give that kind of intense flavor profile to it, and it's brilliant that it's so Swedish that it can put in there and influence it. And that Swedish oak goes into a lot of other recipes that Angela uses in making her seasonals and her moments, literally as like a chili, just a little bit here to add that flavor profile in there, and use sparingly because it's pretty pungent stuff. But yeah, black pepper, I get that. Yeah, the nice sort of gingery black pepper, little sort of tickly on the nose when you smell it. But it really does belie its nose, because the nose is not bland nose. The nose is pretty much full on in fruit, but it doesn't give you that hint of what it's going to really kick you with that flavor. After 2-3 seconds, the spice takes over and you just get a bit of a wash back and go, whoa, where did that come from? You can add water to this one. It's 46. And it's pretty high up in there. All of our nearly all of our seasonals are done at 46.1 as well. 46.1 is a classic Angela number. We don't really know where it came from, but she just loves 46.1%, doesn't she, Richard? A lot of them come out of that. I think there was something around above 46 meant some of the legislation in Sweden, something like that. But 46.1 is where a lot of our stuff, which I think is a great balance between alcohol and flavor of the distillation coming through. So you've got enough alcohol to keep it interesting and the flavor to sit on top of it and merge together.
Yeah, I think it's bang on. This I go between this and the Svensk Rock or Svensk Rock. For those who have just read the name, sometimes this is my favorite of an evening. Sometimes it's a smoky one. But I love this. Just to get geeky again for a moment, Gareth, you mentioned about, if I may.
Yeah, get geeky. Go for it. I'll drink.
You mentioned about the we air dry the staves for it. There's good reason for it. I mentioned about how much of an influence the Swedish oak can have. It's got it's got hardly any wood sugars in there, the sort of thing you get from white oak, from American oak. So it can come out a lot more bitter, not necessarily bitter in a negative connotation attached to the word, but bitter like dark chocolate might be in that way. But when these staves are kiln dried, as lots of people might do, it locks in. If you dry this wood too quickly, it locks in lots of those properties that we might want to get, sort of moderate some of those a little bit, and so they're a bit too heavy. If we kiln dried it, this might say 2% Swedish oak as opposed to 10, because it's locked in a lot of properties we wouldn't want, characteristics that we'd rather do without. So by air drying something, you allow it to naturally flush away some of like the tannins and other properties that are in there. When rain hits the top of it, that can help flush it out as well, and it just makes it much more usable for us and the profile that we're really after. So they can be air dried for anywhere up to 2 years to get them to the right sort of what do you call it? Humidity in the wood? What do you call it? Moisture levels. That's it.
Moisture level in the wood, to hold it, because it's going to be. But the other thing that they do with the wood, then, Richard, when they made the barrel, they really heavily toast the barrel. So there's a heavy toasting going on there, which is really going to pull out the vanilla, the cola flavors. It's really that heavy toasting also has a really big impact on the flavor profile of the spirit that goes into the wood. So it's not only the Swedish wood, and it's and as you say, the tannins and etc. in the wood, the vanillins which come out from the core on the outside from the heavy toasting, that also has a profound effect on the flavor, which makes it so potent. The stuff, so it has to be handled with care, a little bit like a hot chili sauce, but it comes out with a great recipe. So this, I think this originally, it wasn't really called Swedish oak. I think they brought it in about 2012. They changed the name to call it just Swedish oak, Svensk, which is the actual word. So it wasn't really marketed as that originally, but then they thought, no, we're so proud of what this stands for. We're going to put it out as a core range. It's going to be available forever, and it's going to be in that. It's going to hold up with the word Swedish oak written on it as a testament to those guys who planted all that oak 250, 300 years ago that they're now reaping the benefit from. In what was it, Visingo? Was it Visingo? I think it was Visingo or something like that, where they
Visingo Island.
Yeah, Visingo Island, where they did a lot of that stuff. So,
I'll say, Gareth, we're 40 minutes in, so it's probably a good time to move to Jaktlycka. And while we're sort of transitioning into it, I'll say one anecdote or whatever it might be about about growing Swedish oak was when they planted it. I think it was actually around in the 1830s the process began, and then in 1860 for purposes of building a navy and merchant ships. And then 35 years later, in 1865, the first steel ships were built and sailing, in the American Civil War. So it was only 30 years after these oak trees had been planted and were nowhere near to being able to be harvested that they became obsolete. So it's all the more for us in the 150 or 200 years later. But let's do the Jaktlycka.
Okay.
So next one up is the Jaktlycka. It's not in the box. Anyone that's got a tasting pack at home, it's the one that would have come on the side. And this is part of the seasonal range. I think Gareth touched on towards the beginning of the show. This has come out our core range. It's a core range. They're going to be there all the time. Year after year, should be the same sort of flavors you can get. Nice and reliable. Our seasonal range comes out twice a year. We have one that comes out sort of March, April, so spring, summer, and then one that's just come out now in September, that's autumn, winter time. And Jaktlycka is hunting happiness in Swedish.
Happy hunting.
Well, yeah, happy hunting, hunting happiness. We've heard several. Not only can I not pronounce it, I can't tell you the exact translation of it either. But this is about in Sweden. They have something called the I'm going to try and pronounce it, but the Allenmanstraten, which is basically I think that's not bad from hearing.
It's easy for you to say.
But this is. That's the same basically that they have in the same law, the same what they have in Scotland about freedom to roam and your right to roam around. So in Sweden, this is something that culturally they really take seriously, and it's a huge part of their culture. So when the summer months come, unless you're very adventurous, you go in the winter, you go off into the forest, you go off anywhere, go on adventures, and you hunt for things. It could be you're looking for something to eat for the evening. It could be berries. It could just be you're looking for a nice waterfall somewhere to go and take a picture. But this is about going out into nature, finding something that you're looking for and being happy. Some of the inspiration came, so everyone probably pouring now, and as you know, I'll tell you about the inspiration for it as well. For the packaging, at least. So the color scheme that we have on the box comes from was inspired by some of this artwork you can see here now. So John Bauer, he was someone that did lots of a Swedish artist. I think he passed probably not long after the First World War, and his work was concerned with sort of landscape and Swedish mythology. So here you can see lots of things in the forest, and we're trying to get something that could sort of capture that, because it wasn't just the packaging really that inspired it. It was Angela saw this art as inspiration for trying to find a flavor profile too. So hopefully when you're nosing it, which I hope you are, by now, the idea is that you'll find, some freshness, some outdoorsiness to it, so some berries in particular, and I'll tell you about why in a moment, but berries, pine trees, just sort of fresh air, and that's the idea. And I mentioned berries. Probably curious to know what made this whiskey up. The lion's share of it comes from influence from a lingonberry and blueberry wine. So 2 berries, 1 wine, 90% lingonberry, 10% blueberry. If you were like me and semi-familiar with what a lingonberry was before now, lingonberry is basically it's a cousin to a cranberry in terms of appearance and taste. And it comes from a Swedish wine producer. A lot of times we use casks when we can, that come from Swedish producers of various drinks. This is from Gryttan, which is a Swedish wine producer. Here we go. A Swedish sort of fruit wines and different drinks. And for me, I don't know about you, Gareth, it is how I describe what Angela was going for. That's what I get with this nose, like fresh and bright, but there's some richness and a bit of tightness to it.
Yeah, what I love about this, it kind of like, again, it says Swedish. It's a testament to a very famous Swedish winemaker with a very famous Swedish wine. That what they do is they season the barrels with this wine, and then they put our matured whiskey into that barrels for 18 months and to take the essence of that wine. And then they use those flavors in a recipe with other wine, with other spirits as well, to bring in other whiskeys, to bring it together in one thing. So it's not totally about the loganberries and lingonberries, and the blueberries. It's about that as one flavor component of it, but they are so atypically Swedish. An absolute sort of Swedish mainstay, and talking to Swedish people and people that they grow up, they go in the forest and they pick these berries, and they have a really sort of strong emotional contact with berries and picking them in the forest and stuff, because it's part of the Swedish culture. So making wines with these berries and then creating whiskies which capture the essence of those wines inside the whiskey, I think it's just a fabulous method of bringing interest and style and captivation to a whiskey and experimenting, because we follow the rules of whiskey. We always do, or else we can't call it single malt whiskey. But once the 3 years are up, the gloves are off, and then the way that Angela and the team experiment with different finishes, different approaches to mixing the flavor profiles, whether that's with seasoning casks. We have this term seasoning. It's pretty unique, that we will put something into a cask for a period of time to impregnate that cask with that flavor and then put matured whiskey into it. Also, we do it the other classic way. We'll put our old whiskey into something like a Calvados barrel or an Amarone wine barrel or any other kind of barrel. We're not afraid to push those boundaries and to get a flavor that will then contribute to an overall whiskey. We've even mixed it with green tea from Japan, green tea whiskey. We did that this year with Grand Tete, a fabulous whiskey, and the flavor profile of that took so long to work with and to get to the end of it. It's a really long story, not for here, but it shows the extent to which people like Angela will go to work out effectively a recipe and work with that recipe and bring that to us effectively a succession to a point where it's something that can be produced. So there's a lot of experimentation, and when she gets a recipe that works, this is what comes out. This is the result, a seasonal, something that comes out every maybe 6 months or so, and it will last for maybe about 18 months, depending on the demand. A lot of it goes to Sweden, of course, because they're our primary market. But what happens is we may have anything between 2 to 3 to up to 15,000 bottles of these. So quite a restricted release. I think Grand Tete was 15,000. I think this is 15,000 as well. So there is a lot to go around, but it will go, and it will go in 18 months. So seasonals come and go, and this is our latest seasonal Jaktlycka, and it's a real testament. The flavors, and when I first smelled this, I kind of like, yeah, okay, it's pretty good, but I've really grown to love it over the last 3 or 4 weeks. The more I've tasted this, and the more it's got into it, I've really got into it. It's got this kind of honey essence that really grabs you, a real clover honey that kind of sits on there with the fruit on the nose. And when I smell it, and it just gets my taste buds going, and I'm drooling by the time I can smell it. I've got to taste it.
Well, Gareth, while you have a quick draw, because we've actually got a video to show. A video of Angela D'Orazio out doing some Jaktlycka, some hunting happiness in the wild. So Connor, take it away.
Okay.
There's something absolutely magical about the Swedish forest. I love the treasures that I find just stepping out of my office a few meters outside of the distillery. So Grythyttan Wine are a great partner to Mackmyra. We love their natural wines. The taste of this wine that gives the taste to the whiskey is subtle, soft, light fruitiness and fine spice. And it goes really well together with the aromatics of the Swedish whiskey. The Swedish innovative finish together with the Swedish oak, that is a perfect combination.
Well, there you go.
I love that video. I think that's brilliant.
Fantastic.
I think, yeah.
I was just going to say, there was a Jakt release in 2008 where we created a moment, one of these top of the shelf things for Jakt a long time ago, about 13 years ago. So this is a kind of revisited thing for Angela. So it's an improvement and taking that further forward. But what's your favourite so far? We've done 4 out of 5, not long to go, and we've got that special deal for you at the end. So do hang around for us. We'll be there soon.
What do you get on the nose, Gareth? I think we've talked a lot about the build up to it. Be curious to hear what anyone that would like to comment. Let us know what they're finding as well. But
I get a really kind of rich fudge, actually, a sweet fudgy that I get on the nose. It's quite a bit like the biscuit, the butter biscuit that you get from Scotland. That fudgy biscuit that I get there, and the honey essences that come through on the nose. And they do follow through into the flavour profiles as well, of the taste as well. That really kind of sits lovely to it.
I think it's definitely fruity. I say fruity and spicy with you. Probably I've said it. I don't know how many times this evening, but that's because I get fruits and spices in almost every whiskey, at least of the core range and a few of the seasonals that we've had. But it's warm. It's definitely warm. It's warm on the nose. It's warm on the palate. I feel like I'm either out on a summer's day or I'm out in the evening in a nice big coat exploring the woods and the forests. Yeah.
I think the time they've put it out, it is really autumnal. You know, it's the forest, it's the leaves on the floor. It's that time of year where the summer's over, and when you go into the forest at that time of year, you really get the kind of smell of the fruits. Everything's in full bloom. The fruits are all there. The leaves are starting to fall, and I think they've kind of captured that in a liquid as much as you possibly could in a liquid. So that's I think that's a great testament, and really aligns to the whole seasonal approach that Mackmyra want to do with their whiskies, and align them to winter, to summer, and this one is aligned to autumn, to that time of going out harvesting berries, and that time of going out to the forest and looking for those little sweet nuggets that are still there to pick up, like we do in the UK when we go and pick blackberries. I got a load of them by the side of my house. We pick a load, put a load in the freezer, and we make blackberry crumbles with them. It's kind of that culture, you know, that you go and you forage for stuff, for great flavors that's given to you by nature. And I think this is a great testament to those two that are put together in a wine. If you tasted the wine by itself, it's a little bit different because obviously it's not whiskey, but this is the influence of that wine in the whiskey, and then a percentage of that going into the recipe. So it's a great piece. I love this one.
I think the last thing I'll say, Gareth, before we move on to the Svensk Ruck, is just about the cask recipe for it. I mentioned that its influence coming from, we call it saturated casks, but yeah, seasoned is, you know, probably more, yeah, seasoned, saturated, all the same thing. There's 3 different types of casks that we used, that we put this wine into. There was American oak, so virgin oak would have had this wine go in, but we also did it with Swedish oak and ex-bourbon casks as well. So take the bourbon out, and before we put our whiskey in, we've treated it and seasoned it with this wine. But all of those casks I just mentioned, American oak, Swedish oak, ex-bourbon, they're all only between 30 and 100 litres in size. So, you know, it's all like small, concentrated, you know, big bursts of fruits and berries you get from it. But in the mix with it as well, we also had a few casks, only a few, but a few casks had some of our smoky recipe, which we're about to move on to now, and we'll tell you all about. But there was also some virgin and first fill American oak, 128 litres in size. First fill American oak will be because we've had our whiskey in it before. And new and first fill Oloroso between 128 litres to 200 litres in size. So a very complex, without being overly so, but a very complex recipe going into it. And that's sort of, I don't know, it's Angela's signature, isn't it, almost, Gareth? There's only a few we have where there's only a couple of cast types. Most of them is, she's put a lot of thought and effort and passion and energy into creating something. So, yeah.
And they don't happen by accident, Richard. Exactly. It takes a while for these things to. She does a lot of experimentation, a lot of recipe building, and only a small percentage make it through to actually something. She'll prototype a lot of stuff, but only the very best of her recipes will then get through into a production stage. And
it's a tough job, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tough job, tough night.
Tough job.
Yes,
over there, Richard, and we'll taste some of her magic ingredients in her larder, as it were. But it's not going to be today. But
no, it won't. No, but today, before we can go anywhere, we've got to talk about the next one, which is Svensk Ruck.
Okay.
So if you wouldn't mind taking that one away, Gareth.
Yeah, of course, Richard. So Svensk Ruck, this is our smoky effort. So this is the testament to a smoky recipe, and it's not. It is peat, but it's more about, if you imagine a campfire, the smoke of a campfire. And I'll tell you why. The guys originally, I mentioned 20 odd years ago, they went across to Islay, they went to visit Lafroig, and they talked to the guys over there and said, how do you make your peaty whiskey? How do you get that smoke into it? Well, of course, they burned peat to dry the barley, and that smoke, the drying the barley went into the barley, and so when it comes to the mashing process, that smoke has gone into the barley and remains there throughout. So they said, yeah, that sounds good. I'm sure we've got somewhere, and they found peat in I think it was called Karen-Musen, I think, a bog which wasn't too far away. Not bad pronunciation.
No, I think that's right.
And so they found peat in there, both white peat, like a light coloured peat, and a dark coloured peat. So they found, right, we got peat, that's great, but what are we going to do to make it really uniquely Swedish? What have we got that we can do that? Well, we've got a hell of a lot of juniper trees. And so somebody come up with a brilliant idea of saying, why don't we take some twigs of juniper and lay that on top of the peat and just enhance the smoking with something that's much more barky and woody and wood smoke than peat smoke. And they did that. I mean, what they did, they built an experimental smoker in the director's back garden something like 20 odd years ago, and started doing all these different smoking recipes and try to go, there it is. Yeah, look at that little still there. So they started shoveling lots of bits and pieces in there, causing a great nuisance with the neighbors, lots of smoking on the neighbors. They didn't like it very much. But they cut their teeth literally on all the different types of style of smoke that they could put in there. And they come up with a recipe where they put a small amount of juniper on top of that, juniper twigs. And of course, juniper goes into gin, so it's a really big thing. But the juniper that they get, well, where do they get it from? Well, you know, in Sweden, they've got all these electricity pylons and everything that run through the forest and the woods, and all year long they have to cut down the juniper to make sure it doesn't grow into the pylons. So there's always a steady supply of cuttings and twigs that are available. So they collect them all up and they do it. So they do about, I think, maybe 2 runs of peat, the peated and smoked whiskey per year, maybe 3, depending on volume. And so they then switch the recipe, and they've got an old smoker, a big smoker, which sits there, and there's an old guy who's worked there all the time, and I'm forgetting his name now, but he's the guy that basically runs a smoking operation to get the barley smoked with this combination of the Caramus and peat and the twigs from the juniper, and that smoke goes into the barley, and then that barley goes into the mash, and so they make the peaty whiskey. But you know what? It's really high ppm stuff. You know, this is 50 to 60 ppm, which is up with the Ardbegs and the Lagavulins, the Islays of this world. So it is pretty strong stuff. So we don't actually make anything. It's like the Swedish oak. We don't make anything smoky to that extent, to the really heavy smoky. So we're not an Octomore. We won't go to the silly smoky end of really intense smoke, but we make it in a blend. So I think.
A mash bill we make.
Yeah. We make about a third. There are various people who have different views on what the actual percentage is, but imagine about a third of what goes into this recipe is the smoky mash recipe that's gone into there. We do understand there's a heavy smoky, extra smoky recipe, but we haven't seen that come out anywhere yet. We're waiting to see what happens with that. But the 1/3 recipe is there, and that's what goes into the Svensk Ruck. Now, because this is such a manual process, a lot goes into it, the smoking, the collecting of the peat, and etc. What we've got here is a 50 cl bottle. Okay, so 50 cls means that we can keep this at a price level that still is achievable and attainable by people without charging too much for it, because there's such a lot of intense effort that goes into it. So that's why this is 50 cls. Richard, my bottle is brand new, so I've got to open it. What a shame. While I'm opening, why don't you tell people about the nose? What's going on?
Well, so the nose, it's got that smokiness to it. It's certainly not the 60 ppm type of smoke, because as Gareth said, you know, only we take the barley we use when we make our Svensk Ruck, 30% of that barley, or give or take, let's say a third, there or thereabouts, will be peated, and the rest of the barley will be unpeated. So it's not going to be some big, massive, you know, Ardbeg, or as Gareth said, you know, Octomore, anything like that. But there's definitely smoke to it. To me, there's like from day one, I found like a wet smokiness, a wet smoke to it, which I always associate with the use of the juniper branches, the juniper twigs that have gone into the process. A friend of mine described it once to me as a campfire in the rain, and I've always remembered that, because it's rather, you know, poetic or romantic, if you will. On top of that, behind it, there's some pepper to it. There's some spice. There's also like I It's something like a citrus to it, but without not a sweet citrus or anything. It's like lemon peel, like dried lemon peel, orange peel, something in this sort of grapefruit perhaps.
As well as the smoke, there's a fudge as well, a real block of fudge that comes through. But the juniper twigs were, traditionally they were an ancient way for the Swedish people to smoke and, preserve their fish and other meats and things. So they smoked using juniper twigs all the time. So it's a completely indigenous way of smoking. So it was natural for them to include juniper smoking into the process as part of that process. And that's what makes this absolutely unique. It's not that acidic, acerbic smoke that you associate with, as you say, the Ardbegs, Lagerfrülens, the Lafroigs, the real big PTIs. This is more of a smoke and a campfire effect that is much more accessible, I think, for people. And there are people who say, oh, I don't like peaty whiskey, but they taste this and they go, I get that. That's nice and smoky, not peaty. So there is a subtle difference. And I think we get that within our recipe, the way that we use that within the recipe achieves that really nicely. And this, we have to leave it to the end because the smoky whiskey really just flavor the palate and get them. Once you had a smoky whiskey on your palate, it's difficult then to go to softer fruity whiskies, which is the reason why we've left this to the end. So it really, it's up to you. Do you like this kind of stuff? Do you like the smoke that goes in here, the flavors of it? What do we taste it? Let's taste it and see what it tastes like on the tongue.
Skål.
And there it is. It's not a great big slap in the face with an old smoky kipper. It really is a really nice warm glow campfire. When you've woken up, and if you've ever spent a night and fell asleep by a fire, campfire, wood fire, and in the morning you smell your clothes and you can smell in your hair the smoky. It's that kind of essence, that subtle smoky flavor that's in there, and that's just really why this is always one of my favorite ones. The Rook. It's so underrated, and it's why it's part of the core range. A load of people love this when they taste it. It really hits the spot, and people, as I say, who don't like peaty whiskies, they drink this and they thought, "Wow, this is wonderful." And is it a gateway to peaty whiskies? I don't know, but in itself, it's a wonderful whiskey.
I think you mentioned something a moment ago, Gareth, about the extra smoky recipe, which is basically our mash bill of double the amount of peated barley in there, and the Svensk Rook Amerikansk Ek, the older or bigger but younger sibling of this whiskey, is had a few of those casks that went into that had the extra smoke. I just want to highlight that because I know there's at least two people watching this evening that I know have it at home and enjoy it. So I thought I'd let them know that a few of the casks that went into it, that's actually one of the people there, Kate, and her partner Callum, who've got the Svensk Rook Amerikansk Ek. But that is. I called it the bigger but younger sibling because it's bigger, bolder smoke and flavors and caramels to it. But it's actually 5-year-old virgin oak casks that have gone into the Svensk Rook Amerikansk Ek.
They're American, and that's the thing. It's American oak, not Swedish oak, that's gone into this.
Virgin American oak. Yeah.
It dials it up, and if you get a chance to taste that, it's a 70 cl bottle, a little bit more expensive, but it's really worth going for. So if you like the Rook on here, then that's definitely an extension for you to try that as well and look at the difference between it. Slightly younger but slightly more potent, as Richard said, in terms of its smokiness. A little bit more Kate confirming the Amerikansk Ek is delicious, or the Amerikansk Rook even. I don't know, maybe it's one of the two. So yeah, this is the last one of tonight. The 5 that we've had. What have been your favorites? Your particular favorites? What have you liked? What have you not liked? What's hitting your flavor profile? What's ringing your bell?
Start letting us know in the comments, just because it's always we're very curious, always interested to see what people enjoy. But start thinking about them yourself as well, because it'll only be a couple of minutes or so from now but we'll tell you about this offer. But before then, Gareth, I always like to know, it might just be me, but I'm always curious to know what the cask recipe for different whiskies are, and not just from us, from anybody, if it's first, second fill, if it's a refill, whatever it might be. Do you know the recipe for this off the top of your head?
Of course, Richard. Yeah, I mean, it's a blend. It's a recipe like all things. We've got American oak in there. We've got Swedish oak, and we've got some Oloroso in there as well. So there's a real good blend of barrels being in there. And interestingly, because we only do 2 or 3 smoky expressions a year, when we've done a smoky expression, the next distillation that we do that's non-smoky, it still has a hint of smoke in it, and these are called smoky trails. And Angela uses these very carefully in her recipes if she wants to just have a hint of smoke in there. She's got this smoky trails distillation that's sitting there that, there's just a hint of smoke in there, and she uses that in her recipe palette, to great effect in a lot of times. So people are drinking American X too,
They've jumped ahead. Yeah,
they've jumped ahead of the gun. But we hope that we've managed to give you an introduction to the core range and into our seasonal range, and opened your eyes maybe to some of our moment range that we've got in the background. So welcome to the Swedish Mackmyra family of whiskies. I hope you've enjoyed the stuff tonight. I think we got a bit of a deal for these guys tonight, Richard, haven't we?
Well, we've got a couple of things. So if as I said, if anybody could fire off what their favourites are. But there's one thing just to touch on before, because you mentioned seasonal again. Then we've got some seasonal tasting packs in the pipeline. Yes. I can't tell you when they're coming out. It's not because I'm holding it back. I don't know myself yet, but I do know that they're on the way. So keep your eyes peeled on social media for it. But the other thing to talk about, Gareth, before I'm just building the suspense to the deal. The other thing to talk about is what we've got coming up next, because we've actually got a really interesting show next week, haven't we?
We have on the 30th. We're going to really focus on the distillery, and we touched on it tonight. Richard talked about the current distillery, the Gravity distillery, and the way it works. And next week, the team are going to really go in depth into the distillery. So if you're one of these guys that really wants to know what's happening in the distillery and really wants to know your onions around the way things work in there. People call them whiskey geeks. I don't know. I think they're great guys, but I like to drink it. But I do like to know the stuff as well. To be honest, I am a bit geeky as well. I will hold my cards up. So if you're interested in that, the team, we're going to be doing a show next week, live on the 30th. And look out for that on our social media. It'll all be out there. A really interesting show that will be for those guys that really like to understand how a distillery works. And let's face it, we can't visit the bloody thing at the moment because it's off limits, So this is the only way that you can get in there, and find out really from the guys on the inside. I mean, we're ambassadors in the UK and we're telling you the story, but those guys who are physically sitting there, they're the guys that have really got the passion for this thing. And we hope to be able to involve some of those people in the talking about the distillery next week. So join us for that next Wednesday.
Nice. I think I've seen 2 or 3 people now with Jaktlycka and Sven's Rook, and Wayne Powell says your first time Mackmyra taster. So thank you very much for joining us, Wayne. School to you, and I'm glad you enjoyed the Mac. So thanks for joining. Yeah, and Ryan, I can see a comment here from Ryan Clark who said he's looking forward to this distillery episode. So make be sure not to miss it.
Guys, we do regular shows, Mackmyra Life. We try to blend in a little bit of lifestyle, a little bit of information about the whiskies and seeing what's going on. We do regular shows, a couple of 2-3 months or something like this. And it's a great way to communicate with the audience out there and to keep everybody informed about what's happening. But you guys, mainly tonight, are guys that have signed up and new to our distillery. So we want to welcome you to the family, and we want to give you a great deal to maybe get you on your way. And that's a good point, isn't it, Richard? That's a
good self segue, I think, Gareth, you've given yourself there, because you're in charge of announcing you've got the honour of announcing the deal. Okay. So drum roll, blah 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 blah.
Okay. So guys, you've got a lot of choices going on tonight. So what we're going to say to you is this: if you're willing to spend £50 on us with one of our more of the low entry levels, we're going to give you £10 off that. But, and this is the but, if you spend more than £50, this is what happens. Not only do you get free delivery, no delivery charge above £50, but we're going to give you £20 off that. Now, the way you do this, if you're spending up to £50, when you get right through to the end, you put in the code VIP10 on
Gareth, Gareth, I'm so sorry. I've got to interject and just say I believe the offer is actually, you spend £50 or more, it's £10 off. and if you spend £100 or more, it's £20 off, as opposed to up to 50. I'm so sorry to jump in mid delivery there, but just so it's clear for everyone and they don't get too upset with the pair of us. Yeah,
I didn't get the memo. I mustn't have got the memo. That's all. That's my excuse. It's nothing to do with
sorry, Gareth. It was so spend £50, get £10 off. Spend £100, get £20 off. But any order over £50 on the Mackmyra.co.uk website, you do get free delivery, and that's all the time as well. That particular thing. So £50 isn't bad at all. I think for free delivery in this day and age. I'm very guilty of getting to
£100, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm very guilty of getting to £70 or £65 on a particular website or two, and then thinking, oh well, I must spend another £40 to get the £100 and the free delivery. So 50's not.
There's no £100 with Mackmyra. It is the £50. So if you're spending £50, you're getting free delivery and you're getting £10 off. That is absolute bargainsville. Welcome to the world of Mackmyra. And if you join us, we'll give you great deals. Absolutely. That's what we're here to do.
So VIP 10. Sorry, Gav. Just VIP 10 because I don't think I made it clear then as well. VIP 10 for the code and VIP 20.
That's right. So up to 50 and over, VIP 10, 100 and over, VIP 20 is the code that we
did
use.
It. We smashed it.
We got there in the end, Richard. Thank you for your guidance when I was going slightly off track there. I don't know. I blame that little fly that's been buzzing in front of my eyes for the last hour and a half. It's putting me off. Honestly,
that's it.
Going like this, I'm going to get it in a minute.
That's probably time. That's time to wrap it up. You go and deal with this fly, and open a window or trap him humanely, or however you plan to deal with it. Just about to say thank you everybody for watching. To say thank you to Connor for being behind the scenes and being on point once again with the pictures and videos. Thanks to Camille and Shane for helping us in the comments, and thank you everybody. Whether or not you're new to Mackmyra or I know there's a few people in the comments who've been talking about bottles they already own. Thank you very much for the support and coming back. We hope to see you again, as well as our new Mackmyra family members. So thank you very much.
So two further things, Richard. So we've got a Facebook site. Please go on there and like and subscribe to the Facebook site. You get a lot of information there. And of course, we've got our web shop, Mackmyra.co.uk, where we have all of our products and all of our releases are on there with our special offers, and well worth browsing around and keeping in touch with that, because we've got a lot of stuff happening on there. So be really grateful if you could go on there, like, subscribe, and join our happy community. It's been a pleasure talking to you guys tonight. Welcome to the Mackmyra family.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you all again. Cheers.
Skål.
Skål. Yeah.
Det finns goda förutsättningar att göra whisky i Sverige. Vi har väldigt bra korn, vi har bra vatten och whiskyn kan lagras på svenska ekfat. Allt startade med att det var 8 studiekamrater som hade en träff, och där kom de på den här fantastiska idén att göra en svensk whisky baserad på svenska råvaror. Det var grunden till Mackmyra som startade 1999. Vi försöker tillverka whisky på ett så modernt och effektivt och miljövänligt sätt som möjligt. Och för att kunna göra det så har vi byggt världens mest klimatsmarta destilleri.
Från pelletsanläggningen får vi 125-gradigt vatten som vi använder när vi destillerar och för att få upp temperaturen i pannorna. Hetvattnet ger ju oss en jämn temperatur under hela koket. Och det gör att vi får korta koktider och en väldigt bra produkt i slutändan. Att pelletsanläggningen ligger nära destilleriet är ju en stor fördel. Både ekonomiskt och driftsmässigt för oss. Sen dessutom så är det helt i linje med hur vi ser på miljö och innovation.
Vi gör whiskyn enligt konstens alla regler, men vi gör det på vårt vis och med svenska råvaror. Vi framställer den på ett innovativt sätt och med nyfikenhet, och med så lite miljöpåverkan som möjligt. Det är för oss en självklarhet.